Today we're talking with Omaha legend Jeff Slobotski about the power of proximity, how face-to-face interactions, local events, and human connection are more important now than ever. Hey, welcome to Growing a Fruitful Brand, where we discuss how to create and grow a brand that makes the world a better place for you, your customers, and your employees. I'm Ben Luters, founder and art director of Fruitful Design and Strategy. Jeff Slobotski is a connector. He was the co-founder of Silicon Prairie News, which grew a vibrant community of entrepreneurs and creatives here in the Midwest. That community turned into an amazing yearly event known as Big Omaha, an event that was such a big part of my own story and the story of many other Omahans. Now, Jeff is the business and ecosystem development manager for this awesome project here in Omaha called Millwork Commons with Paul and Annette Smith. And he's going to share a bit about that today as well. I hope you're encouraged to really embrace good old-fashioned human interaction during my conversation with Jeff Slobotski. In episode 13 of Growing a Fruitful Brand, Raj and I gave some predictions for 2023. And the big thing that we kind of came away with was that this year is going to be the year of personal, things getting personal, back to face-to-face interactions, local events and meetups. As I was talking to my friend Jeff Slobotski yesterday, I realized, hey, who better to talk about, personal connection, face-to-face meetings and events than the unofficial mayor of Omaha, Jeff Slobotski himself. So Jeff Slobotski, welcome to Growing a Fruitful Brand.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for that intro. Super kind intro. And excited to be on the show and talk with you today. Spend some time.
Well, we go way back. Full disclosure, I actually used to babysit Jeff's kids, when there were fewer of them.
Right, fewer and younger.
And I had no kids.
Right.
So now we each have 5 kids. So pretty
They're
cool.
They're going to babysit us soon.
I mean, sooner than you might think.
Right.
But, when I first met you, however many years ago, gosh, I don't know, 14, something like that. Yeah. Silicon Prairie News was getting started, the Big Omaha Conference. These are things that Jeff helped to spearhead. And so today, as we're talking about things getting personal and talking about face-to-face interaction, I'd love for Jeff to tell a little bit of the history of some of these things that he helped to found that really became catalysts for a lot of cool things here in Omaha. And so to just start off, can you give everyone just a brief history of how in the world did Big Omaha come together, and what was Big Omaha?
Yeah, you bet. And thanks, Ben. Excited to spend some time with you and reminisce to an extent and maybe give some, insight to where we're going, right, as a community in future. Big Omaha really originated out of the community that we started building through Silicon Prairie News. And just give a little backstory. I was working for a tech company on the sales and marketing side. This is probably late 90s, early 2000s. Well, no, I'd say early 2000s.
Yeah.
And was traveling around to these different larger cities, right? Startup hubs. So Boston, New York, Austin, San Francisco, right? Cities in between. And I get back home to Omaha, and I'd realize that, hey, we had the same people here, right? Like entrepreneurs, investors, creatives, like in our own backyard, but no one was really telling their story. And so I started a blog just really on the side. It was called Midwest to Manhattan.
That's before my time. I don't remember that.
It was short-lived, right? Because the URL, it's like, how do you type that all out? .com / all this stuff. But it was really, and I kind of took this approach. I'm like, well, who wants to read? It was, first person narrative. So it was like, who wants to read about me talking about where I was going? But kind of quickly shifted it. It came up with this idea, Silicon Prairie.
Did you come up with that name?
So it's like, I didn't trademark it. We didn't trademark it necessarily, but it was this idea to say, you had Silicon Valley in San Francisco, kind of West Coast. You had Silicon Alley in New York, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of people associated New York and kind of the startup community there with Silicon Alley. And it was this idea to say, hey, the prairie, right? Like when folks think Omaha, they think Midwest. They think, Dust Bowl.
Flyover state.
Flyover, no internet, right? Like no paved roads. I guess maybe in some parts of the city it's still the same, but for the most part, we've got paved roads here.
It's getting better.
It's getting better. We've come a long way over the last 15 years. So,
That's right.
but yeah, it was this idea to say, let's just kind of play on the ag kind of native background of where we're at, right?
Well, and it kind of, you kind of planted a flag then, and
Sure.
and so I came into the mix when it was already Silicon Prairie News, and I was already called that, and I thought it was so cool when I heard it, because it was like at that time, and there was a lot of cool tech, startup stuff starting to happen. I mean, big thanks to you and the people around you and that community coming out of Silicon Prairie News. I said Valley,
right?
But it just was so cool that you guys kind of owned it a little bit too, and didn't, it was like, no, we are the Silicon Prairie, and it's kind of funny, know.
Yeah.
And the little groundhog or prairie dog or whatever as the mascot.
Yeah, we had the mascot, and again, not it wasn't something a head of corn or a cow or something.
Right.
Cows came in later with Big Omaha,
that's right.
right? So
We'll
it started with the prairie dog. But again, too, I think the biggest thing, when we would talk to friends or just folks outside the area, they were like, oh, you're trying to mimic Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley, and that wasn't it either, right?
No.
It was kind of trying to say, hey, this is unique. The people, the skills, the companies that were here in our own backyard are unique to here, but it needed to have a naming, kind of branding.
Yeah.
You know that better than anybody, right? You got to have a brand and a name behind it. So yeah,
it was absolutely brilliant. Who helped with the design and branding and stuff at that time for Silicon Prairie News?
Yeah, that's a great question. We so a lot of it was internal, right?
Oh,
Dusty
nice.
and his team, we had kind of creatives on Bright Mix, exactly. Oxide Design did the branding for Big Omaha.
Oh man, so good,
yeah.
so good. Do all those sites, are they still live? Can you go? Because I know that there was a while there where you could go and see some of that old branding, because every year Oxide would do this amazing event branding for Big Omaha. So now we're getting into Big Omaha now. So Big Omaha, this in-person conference kind of grows out of what was going on with the community in Silicon Prairie News.
Right,
so
exactly.
Tell about that, and what year was that?
Yeah, so 2009 was the first year, and to your comments, Ben, it was this idea. We were holding some smaller gatherings and meetups when Silicon Prairie News was around. So we called them tweet ups, right? Using Twitter and kind of that whole platform. But a lot of it was like, hey, you're a creative designer and you're doing cool work, tweeting back and forth, and it'd say, okay, let's get people together in a shared space, right? Yeah. And not just kind of reading information online or communicating.
So I told you, he's all about
online.
this. He's all about this human connection.
Yeah,
this guy.
yeah. But this is a different conversation, right?
Yeah.
Than if you and I were on Zoom, right? Or you and I are just kind of tweeting back and forth, or whatever it is today. Be real, or whatever, Snapchat, or everything in between.
TikTok,
exactly. Doing TikTok videos back and forth. So it was this idea to say, hey, we started to see people that were coming out to events and just get-togethers, right? Bar camp were some of the early, great events back in the day, and that was exciting. That was infectious. It was motivating, right? There's so many other words I think that we could include around that time period, and it was this idea to say, there's great power in connecting people not only online but offline as well, right? And you get two individuals talking to one another, brainstorming up an idea for a company or a new brand or whatever it might be, right? And they go off and do something great. And I don't know, it looking back at it, I feel like it gave everybody a sense of identity, a sense of belonging to something bigger, right?
Oh yeah. You felt like you found your tribe, your community, and there was many tribes within. You come to Big Omaha, there'd be lots of different people. But for me, and Jeff knows this, but I kind of came on the scene in Omaha. I was working as a designer in my basement for a company overseas in Hawaii, actually, where I'm from. And I didn't know anybody. I had Twitter and early days of Facebook and all that stuff. And there was all these people I was following, Jeff being one of them. And I saw this all kind of happening virtually. And then I won, this coloring contest to go to Big Omaha 2011, I believe. And that's where I met everyone. And that's where, I got a job off of the attention that gave me. And that kind of got me out of my basement into, the real world. And it was so fun to meet all these people that I'd been kind of watching from a distance. And then just feel like instantaneously I felt like I was a part of this this community, and I'm just some
That's awesome.
kid just like showing up and having lunch with some of my idols, at the time. And so that was a lot of fun. Was Gary Vee, I think, was there that year, wasn't he?
Yeah, probably 11. Gary Vee came a lot of the early years.
Mark Echo.
Mark Echo. Yeah. But your comments, Ben, that gets me excited even just hearing that story, right? And again, fast forward to where we are today and what you've done and your team's done.
Thank you.
Not only in Omaha, but again, like doing work around the country, around the globe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what motivates me, frankly. And that's what excites me kind of internally, right? Is you or anyone else being a part, feeling like they can take the first step to get involved in a community, right? Taking that first step. The initiative's on them too, right? It can't we can't just say, snap your fingers and you're, you've got an amazing design and identity firm like you do. There's work that is dependent upon the individual as well. But but big Omaha, gosh, looking back at it again, we had some really fun times. We had some really fun people come in.
Oh yeah.
And the thing that I really enjoy was some of the individuals that came in, some of the speakers that came in, just their humility, their sense of curiosity, to want to learn from others in the community and the culture, right, and the DNA of what the Midwest was about and what Omaha was about. Was
when
really
you first reached
encouraging.
out to these people, were they like, what the heck, Omaha? Do I want to come here?
Pretty much. Pretty much. A handful were like, gosh, I'm trying to think. Some of the early guys, like Miha Baldwin was another one. A lot of folks, owe a lot to him, and just the time that he spent with people, and just his raw honesty about his life's journey as well, right? As an entrepreneur, as a human, as an individual, and he remains a close friend today, right? And so a lot of the folks that came in, they're real people. They're humans, right? Just like us. Maybe they've sold another company, or two more than we have, or started a bigger, branding agency, whatever it might be.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, they have that sense of curiosity and wonder and creativity too.
And there was, I thought, a lot of vulnerability, like on the stage, like these people. So some of those speakers were just sharing, right from their heart. It wasn't the sugar coated. Right. It was the real nitty gritty stuff that people need to know. Like, we're all in this together, starting something or doing whatever. And there was some really good talks, in those early days.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. It was, there was a lot of fun to, Mark Echo, the 10 commandments of a startup, right? 10 commandments of an entrepreneur. And like, I think he had Biggie Smalls, playing in the background as he's chopping down like the top 10 tips for entrepreneurs. But then there was also, like you said, the raw honesty from others about, like, this is hard stuff, like starting a company, and not just even starting a company, like, frankly, just living life, right? And so, I think it was a really special time. Some of the greatest memories I have are of guys like Mark Echo, who you mentioned, or Gary, or whoever, right? Mark Echo, I grew up seeing the Echo Unlimited logo on my friends' T-shirts, right? And then, like, you blink and he's in the back of Coneco in Omaha, Nebraska. And it's like, wait, what's going on? Like, is this like, another dream? But after the talk, he didn't head for the green room, which we didn't have a green room.
That's why he didn't head there.
Right, exactly.
Had
That's
there
why he
been
wasn't
the
able
green
to.
room, he would have been there the whole time.
Maybe, right, exactly. Hanging out in the back with the M&Ms and waiting for the private plane. But we didn't have either of those. But he's sitting in the back of Coneco just like talking to people. For hours, right? And just kind of motivating them and answering questions. And that's, to me, over the years as I've grown, I'm like, I don't care about titles. I don't care about like your accolades, what you've done. Like that's like doesn't mean anything to me, right? But if you can spend time with another individual, like regardless of who you are, your status, your stature in life, look them in the eyes and listen to their story, truly listen, right? That to me is impressive, right? And so if you happen to be Mark Echo or somebody else, but you treat people, anybody, with that level of respect and humility and just curiosity, like, again, that's why I tell folks all the time, that's a win. Like, that's a real person right there. So,
I love that you keep coming to this idea of curiosity, because I do think that is at the heart of this. I think a lot of times people don't, make time to go to the event or to have the conversation or,
Sure.
whatever, just because. And I think at the heart of it, sometimes it's just a lack of curiosity. We're busy. It's easy for us to be kind of focused on ourselves and our own problems and what's going on. And we all have a lot going on, but, becoming curious about the other person, about other people and what other people are doing. It's crazy the amount of good that can come to you from that posture too. I mean, just having that kind of hunger and interest, you'll find, for us, curiosity is a big part of Fruitful because, if we're not curious, we're not solving people's problems.
Right.
We're not, that's what our whole posture has to be about, being curious enough to, hey, where are you stuck? What, how can I help you?
Sure.
And that's where collaboration really comes in too. And I think of Big Omaha as just a cool, a lot of C words here, but collision, and a lot of collaboration that kind of came out of that, out of the interactions and stuff in those days. Do you have any other cool stories, Big Omaha stories before we move on to the present time?
How much time do we have? The present time. Yeah, gosh,
it's about a 3-hour conversation.
Show,
yeah,
right,
so,
no doubt.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so many, countless ones. I think some of the one of the really fun ones that I enjoyed was Scott Harrison, who's the founder of Charity Water. An amazing global nonprofit based kind of out of New York and Nashville, but they're building wells across the country and serving communities that don't have clean, healthy, pure drinking water. And got connected with Scott through a mutual friend. He came in and spoke at Big Omaha. I don't know, 700, 800 people in Coneco. You could hear a pin drop during his talk, right? And at the end of it, just gets a standing ovation, which is awesome, which is amazing, right? People kind of raising their hand to be involved and get involved in Charity Water, expand kind of their work. But then, I think it was 3 or 4 speakers that had also come in for Big Omaha that are talking to Scott afterwards that agreed to sign up to be key major donors, right? Gary was one of them, Vanderchuck, Jason Fried from 37 Signals, and a couple other guys. And so not only do you have the connection happening on a local, regional level, but you have the connection happening on more of a national, global level, right? Like other successful entrepreneurs that are hearing Scott's story that are like, oh my gosh, I want to make an impact. I want to make a difference too, right? So that was some of those, connection points were a lot of fun.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So, but a lot of good times.
Yeah.
A lot of good times through the years, and
Well, it's funny as you're reminiscing down memory lane here. The funny thing for me, and maybe I was just living under a rock or something, but Big Omaha is where I found out about all this. I remember I found out about Uber at Big Omaha. I found out about, I didn't know who Gary Vee was until Big Omaha. So now these guys were kind of rising to prominence. Now Gary Vaynerchuk is huge, it's
right.
But it was really fun to me because it was kind of it was how I learned about a lot of things that were happening, outside. And then pretty soon these things, Scott Harrison and, Charity Water and stuff, those are household names now.
Right.
But at the time, that was how I found out about it. So
again,
I might have been under a rock. I don't know.
No. You weren't. It was early. And that was some of the things too, looking back at it, we wanted to find kind of the rising stars, if you were, the rising ideas even. Because Charity Water, but also guys like Neil Blumenthal from Warby Parker, right? And came in and talked about how Warby Parker was going to disrupt lens crafters, and everyone in that room believed it, but also was like, well, is this really going to happen? Do they really have the wherewithal to do it? And then now it's
my wife wears Warby Parkers, exactly. And it's I have Warby Parker screen glasses.
Yep.
So it's crazy. But that was where I first heard about Warby Parker. I was like, this is wow, this is an amazing idea.
Sure.
I sure hope this works out.
Right. Exactly.
And it did.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have copied it too.
Yes. Since then. Yeah. But I think it's, it's that idea that when we listen to something, whether it's a podcast or a speaker at Big Omaha, or we meet somebody, right? They plant a seed or an idea or a concept in your head that wow, I could do something big, bold, push the envelope too, right?
Oh, yeah.
How do I start? Where do I start? And then you look around a room and you see, okay, hey, I'm not the only crazy one in here, right? There's hundreds of others, right? And so that's where I think kind of that power comes from, just kind of being open to that curiosity.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I just love about it, that I loved about it was, it's called Big Omaha, right? And you did bring in these big speakers, but in a lot of ways, it was a local event. It was a regional event. You know what I mean? It wasn't like you had to go fly somewhere far away. And most of the people that came, I imagine, were people from Omaha, Nebraska, Council, the area, the prairie, more or less. Is that safe to assume? Most people that were coming were
in the start,
regional?
But towards, I'd say, kind of middle to end of the event or end of the years that we ran the event, we had folks. I think one year we had folks from like 25 states.
Wow!
And
so it really
we
started
had
making a name for itself.
It did, and definitely a heavy contingent through the Midwest. But also we were getting a lot of friends and just other folks from New York and LA and San Francisco that were coming in to be like, okay, something's going on in the Midwest.
That's cool. Yeah, that's super cool. Well, I love the heart of it. It starts as this local thing, and even embrace the name, Big Omaha. And really, that's one of the things I've always loved about you. It's the same with the Prairie, same with Big Omaha, is like just you really like not being ashamed of the Midwest and kind of embracing it. With Big Omaha, it's like the cow.
Yeah.
It's okay. There's a bunch of cows. I hear a lot of people trying to like, we're not like this. We're not like this.
Yes.
And you drive through all the rest of Nebraska and you just see cows and cornfields. It's real. And it's fun to like, this is what people think of you. Why not embrace it to some degree and have a prairie dog as your mascot or whatever? Like, it's kind of fun, and it's something unique about us instead of something to be like, ashamed of. But I loved how it was this kind of local first thing. And that was another thing that Raj and I talked about in that predictions episode was this idea of, especially as we're, coming out of, I know COVID's been going on for like 4 years or something like that, but we're coming out of this era, where there was not as much face-to-face, shall we say, interaction and events, et cetera. And since then, a lot of people's work looks a lot different. There's a lot more remote work, et cetera. A lot of people working from home. And a lot of people have cut back on their travel, budgets and conference budgets. That we see there's going to be a whole lot more just local events and local things happening. And so, Jeff, you're the kind of guy who has like your pulse on what's happening in town, and that's a lot of the job that you do now.
Sure.
So I was just curious if you could kind of just share what are some cool things, for our Omaha. Listeners, like what are some cool things that people could be a part of now or anything that you're excited about from your vantage point?
Yeah. I'd say there's so much going on in this city coming out, like you said, of the pandemic over the last couple of years. And it's interesting to see, I feel like the level of, or the energy level, if you will, is where it was kind of around the time of Silicon Prairie News in the early years of Big Omaha, right?
Yeah.
And the new Gene Leahy Mall and parks, I should say, right, that have been redone along the riverfront that's opening later this summer. In a building, not just a building, but actually the Kiewit Luminarium is something that I'm thrilled that is in our city.
Yeah, talk about that for a minute for those who maybe don't know, because like, my goodness, there's some crazy development happening here in Omaha, and you're right. The Gene Leahy Mall, and it's stretching now towards the riverfront,
right?
And then that's going to lead you right to this Kiewit
Luminarium, which is science and exploratorium. I'd say kind of exploring the idea of science and creativity and just all things wonder, all things creativity, right? And the individual Silva Raker who's running that. Gosh, we're so lucky to have her in this city. And her experience with the Exploratorium in San Francisco.
Right.
And not only Silva, but gosh, she's just got a rock star team that she's assembled there of humans from Omaha that have done great work. And just the concept of the way that they want to open that space up and make it accessible to all Omahans, right, across the community. It's not, hey, if you can afford, the membership fee or the entrance fee at the door, then we're going to allow you in. It's like, nope, that's, farthest thing down on the list for them. It's like, how do we get the most people from the community into this building, in this space?
So cool.
So so it's the building, but less the building and more the concept and the people behind it that I'm excited by. Millwork Commons, obviously the development that, working on right now with our team. Just thrilled, that came online a handful of years ago, right before COVID.
Yeah, let's talk about this a little bit. So this is what Jeff's doing now. And for those who are in Omaha, what Millwork Commons is. You've been hearing about it. There's a lot of cool stuff happening there. But if you just want to kind of talk a little bit about your role at Millwork Commons and kind of what's happening there. We met there yesterday. There's amazing Archetype Coffee has a location in there. There's Coneflower Creamery, the greatest ice cream in Omaha, has a second location opening up there.
Yeah.
This is going to be the place to be in the next 2 to 5 years. So tell us about your role there and kind of what's happening in this area just north of where we're at right now.
Right. No, yeah. So I came on board about 3 years ago now, and really focusing on kind of the business and ecosystem development, right? And those are just kind of terms, names. Working with Paul and Annette Smith and the amazing team that we've got assembled with us there. And Millwork really is this idea. I often say it's a physical manifestation of what we are doing with Silicon Prairie News and Big Omaha. In a sense, for me, it is, right? And what I mean by that is it's a place that you can come and be inspired by other entrepreneurs, artists, creatives that are in our city. Whether that's over a coffee or over a meal or at an event that happens in the space.
So it's not just like an event; it's an actual place and space. It's like really embodying that spirit.
Yeah. So all in, it's about 45 acres of land of development, right? So this doesn't happen overnight, and it hasn't.
Yeah,
and,
it's not just one building too.
Right.
So this is like the Mastercraft, and there's a lot of things around it, and some more stuff that's coming up too, right?
Absolutely.
More housing or development stuff happening.
Right. So Mastercraft is there as part of Millwork Commons and has been in operation, for the last, dozens of years, right?
Yeah. And a big part of that Silicon Prairie stuff and a lot of the cool stuff happening at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where John Henry was.
Dave Nelson, John Henry, Megan Hunt from Camp Collective.
Co-working,
Flywheel started out of there.
Silicon
Prairie News started out of Grain and Mortar. Yeah. So
we're like the only ones that didn't. We actually looked at a space in the Mastercraft and we ended up settling here. But
you were down there. You were down there, though. You came down for a bit.
Yeah. No, I worked a day with John Henry and those guys. Yeah, it's super fun. Super great space.
So Mastercraft, and then the Ashton building, which is identifiable, got a great colored water tower at the top, right? So if you get lost,
hard
you
to
can't
miss.
find. It's hard to miss. And it's adjacent to Hot Shops. So Hot Shops isn't in Millwork Commons proper, but great, partners. They've got 90 plus artists from the community that have little kind of workspaces there, and encourage folks to check that space out if you haven't seen Hot Shops before.
So that's a really cool, and that has been around for a long time. I remember touring Hot Shops as a student back in the day, and a lot of students in the Omaha area, they've been to Hot Shops, or some people have taken pottery classes, and there's a lot of things, activities you can do. But that is so if you know where Hot Shops is, this is just north of that, right?
Just north, kind of north, east, north, everything direction, right next door to it. But as you mentioned, Ben, the Hello Apartments, so those just opened up earlier this year, and they, or I should say earlier, mid last year. And so there's about 172 units in those apartments. We're building another apartment building just east of Hot Shops, so that's actually broke ground already. Probably be ready in about a year and a half, 2 years, 18 months, somewhere there. Another 170 plus apartments. Right. And then, we're continuing to develop the buildings and the land around the existing infrastructure. But I think the biggest thing is it's not only about the buildings themselves, but it's about the programming and the events and the activity that happen within the Commons.
Tell us about that. So, what kind of things do you have going? What could people, locally here in Omaha be more involved in with Millwork Commons?
The easiest way to find out kind of, everything going on is subscribe to the newsletter on our socials, right? So millworkcommons.com is the website. You can hop on the newsletter there.
Awesome.
And then Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Millwork Commons, right? Because there is just every week there's a handful of things, whether it's yoga on Thursday nights with a local yoga instructor, Lizzie, and that rotates throughout the year. 1 Million Cups, which is entrepreneurial startup focused, every Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. I think, 50, 60 people from across the community are coming every Wednesday morning. Wow. There's a monthly event called Millwork Conversations, where we sit down with kind of local change agents and leaders from the community doing great work and, have a discussion with them.
You often host that, right?
I do. Yeah. So host aside, great guests.
Yeah,
great
it's
friends.
in spite of Jeff.
Right.
That is
come down and just listen to the individuals. But again, I mentioned Silva from the Luminarium. She's new to town herself, or was at the time, But again, there was, I don't know, 70, 80 people that came down because they were like, okay, we need to know more about what's going up on the riverfront, right? We want to see it. And so, in a lot of it is how does Millwork partner with other great organizations across the community too? And so some of it's like, hey, Culture House on North 24th is hosting this event for, youth and focused on arts and music. We want to promote that. We want to send people to Culture House as well, or Highlander, right, for good work that's happening. Or, just get the word out in the community that we want to partner with other amazing nonprofits and organizations.
That's such a cool posture, though, Jeff, because, it's not just like, hey, everything cool is happening right here, and if you're not here, it's like, no, there's all kinds of cool stuff popping up around. It's not just, at Millwork. So it's cool that you guys are willing to, promote other cool things happening as well.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of, the rising ships kind of mentality. It's if Millwork can play a role in that, then amazing, and we want to, right? Minutes from the airport. And I'd say, as a lifelong Omahan too, most of the development has been south of Cumming Street, right? Yeah. So as you come in from the airport and you look and you see the ballpark and, the convention center and all the great development, again, south of Cumming, Creighton University Kiewit headquarters, but there's amazing things happening north of Cumming Street, right? And has been. Yeah. And so how, again, how can we play a role within Millwork? How can we play a role as individuals in this city to talk about the great things that are happening across our community, right? Not just in one area or one part of town, but to say, hey, did you know what's going on here? Or, hey, come with me to this event, at this part of town. Yeah. Just kind of continue to spread the word, I think, is good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Jeff, one of the things I noticed yesterday, and I've noticed it before, even in the big Omaha days, but, when we were hanging out yesterday, you just have this way of just kind of acknowledging the presence of like everyone you're passing on the sidewalk or in the coffee shop. I just notice you just kind of acknowledging and saying hello to people. Now maybe you just know everybody, but sometimes I suspect it's people that you maybe don't even know. You're just kind of, and I think that's an amazing, and maybe that ties into the curiosity. But I was just curious if you could give people some tips on how they can just be more, present with people and just more. Inviting to those kinds of, collision, because I see you as someone who's very, well connected and has really embraced these kind of just very human interactions. But I think some might be a little more shy about that, or more afraid to do that. So I don't know. Do you have any just practical tips or things that you've kind of embraced to be just a more inviting and friendly guy?
Yeah, thank you.
How do we be more like you?
Oh goodness, no, that's not the.
That's not really the question.
That book comes out never. So,
oh darn.
No, thanks, Ben. I try to boil it down, if you will, to a handful of things. I think it's this sense of just not losing the curiosity for life and for people, right? And it's been a bumpy last couple of years, for sure, for all of us, right? Yeah. Not just for me. And I've kind of turned internally and maybe get a little bit guarded or a little bit, jaded, right? Just towards life and towards society, right? In a sense, and say, you know what, like, this is tough, like, and I've got it figured out and I've got family to take care of. So, like, who needs to smile at somebody on the street, or who cares what so-and-so is doing, right? But But I think all of us have that sense of curiosity and sense of wonder. I think it gets tamped down, or whether that's through school or life or just experiences, right? We kind of just get burnt out, if you will. So I don't know. It's this idea to say, like, everyone's got a story, but will we stop long enough to hear it, and will we stop long enough to listen? Right? Yeah. And we are go, 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 and I'm go, go, go all the time. And there's been a lot of reading and kind of podcasts and things I've been listening to over the last handful of months too, that are this whole idea that just stop and be present, because you're going to miss opportunities, right? Right. And we look back and we talk about Big Omaha and Silicon Prairie News, but like a lot of what made those experiences in that time period memorable for all of us was the ability for us to stop and just be present, right?
Clear your schedule and just like be present,
Talk to somebody else, hear what they're working on, right? Again, ask the speaker to come into Omaha, Nebraska, you know, I mean, again, I say I didn't coin this line, but the answer is always no unless you ask.
That's good. Write that down, kids.
Right? So it's like, okay, if you don't, you know, if you're not, you know, you say Mark Echo, oh man, he's not coming into Omaha, Nebraska. Yeah, he's not, because you're not going to ask, right? And so like it's this idea of kind of molding all this together.
I had the same thought with getting Jeff Slobotski on the podcast. It's like, there's no way he would ever. But I asked, and here he is. So here you go.
Stop. You are funny.
He's my Mark Echo.
You are funny. Yeah, Mark Echo. This is the Echo line,
Slobotski,
Echo Unlimited. Yeah, exactly. Goodness. I think it's, I don't know. It's tough. I don't do it perfectly, but I think it's this idea to say, you know, gosh, there's so many relationships, there's so many people around us in our lives. And again, there's going to be people that were like, I do not click with you. Like our views do not align. Like, you're upsetting to me, but you can still treat that person with a sense of dignity and humility, right? You don't need to hang out with them and get coffee, you know, every week or every month.
Right.
But you also don't need to, you know, I don't know, throw them by the wayside and belittle them on social media, whatever it is, right? It's just kind of life's too short for that. And so, and then when you find great people and great work happening, wherever that is, whether that's Omaha, whether that's Ohio, right? Whether that's New York, it's this idea to say, hey, just like change the narrative on your city, your community, other people in the community. And all of us have the power to do that, right? Like it's literally a post online on social media, be like, hey, did you know about this great organization? Or like, hey, check out what Fruitful Design's doing. Like, man, amazingly creative work, right? It's not hard. Like people don't need huge platforms or write books about this stuff. It's just this idea of how do you carry yourself on a daily basis? And we're going to get it wrong. We're flawed. We're human, right? But this idea to say, hey, treat others with respect, just a level of, you know, dignity. Let's start there. Yeah. Again, you can differ. And you can say,
and you will differ.
Or I don't totally understand that medium of art that you're working in, but I respect it because you're passionate about it, right? And I can see you're doing good work and pouring your heart into it.
Like that's starting from a place of respect instead of like trying to figure out what I don't like about it and try to amplify that. I like that what you said about, you know, that we all do kind of start with this level of curiosity and that it kind of gets tamped out of us. It can over time because it's so true. When I look at my own kids, they're so curious. Everything is a question. They're always interested in me and what I'm doing and everyone around them. And I think there's like this childlikeness that we kind of need to cultivate. Like it's probably there, but it's probably, you know, just kind of been, you know, forgotten or diminished with busyness, with stress, with, you know, all the political, socioeconomic turmoil that we've experienced in the last however many years. But I think, you know, I agree with you, Jeff, that I think that curiosity will take you so far. You know, you think of some of the most successful, you know, podcasters and authors and speakers, and, you know, these people are just insatiably curious. And it's like some of the most successful ones, they hardly say anything. They just ask questions of people. And it's like crazy how we all get drawn into that. And we're so drawn to those people and they're almost saying nothing. They're just asking and they're curious and you get to learn with them.
Yes.
You know?
That's so well said. Yeah. You're exactly right. It's that curiosity and great analogy, you know, too. It's some of the guy, like Rich Roll is a guy that I really, love his podcast, right? Because he's always interviewing, you know, fantastically amazing people. You know, but again, to your point, like it's not him talking about his life's journey. It's asking those questions of whoever it is that he's, you know, and then learning from them and kind of weaving those stories together. So that's right.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Jeff, is there any chance that Big Omaha could make a comeback? Like it's been gone for a while. I mean, how long has it been? Since 2016, 17?
It's been gone for a minute. Yeah, Maha ran Maha Discovery for a bit. And then, it was probably 15, 16. Somewhere right in there. So it has been a minute. The question was, is there a possibility?
Is there like, could this come back? Like, what are you doing, Jeff?
Yes.
Like,
what are we doing?
What do I need to do to
get this happening?
This?
Get 1,000 signatures on this.
We may send out a petition. Anyways, I would love to see it come back. And I mean, I think back on those days. No, the cool thing is there's a lot of cool things happening,
Yes.
though. And it's not like you said, the spirit of Big Omaha is alive and well in Omaha and in places like Millwork Commons.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we have to just sit at home and wish for the good old days.
Right, exactly.
There are new and cool things.
Yes.
So I do want to encourage people, if you're in the Omaha area, sign up for that, the Millwork Commons, newsletter.
Yeah, newsletter and
follow on
socials.
social media. And things like the Luminarium, they'll be opening up next month.
Next
right?
month,
it's
yeah.
like coming up really soon. I was just on the website yesterday with my kids, and they're like getting excited.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
We've been watching the construction happening and stuff. So.
Yeah. No. Well. Yeah. I think. Yeah. Is there a possibility of Big Omaha coming back? Yes. Right. Like I think
you heard it first here, fellas.
It's not absolutely not never. Like man, it's. But you said it really well, Ben. It's this idea to say, hey, Big Omaha is just a couple day event, right?
Yeah.
When we ran it, it was fun. But I often said, and Dusty often said, this idea of like, what do you do with that energy? What do you do with the connections? What do you do with the ideas that come from Big Omaha? Like that's what's most important the next 360 plus days, right? And so, and I think there's a lot of amazing things that are starting to pull the community back together. Meeting in person, right? And learning from one another and experiencing that energy in this city that, if we were to pull something like that together again, it'll take a little time to build that community back together, but it could be fun. So we'll see.
Well, hey, we're waiting, but let me know if you need any help in any way.
Absolutely. That's a definite,
Because, it's super exciting. And Jeff, I'm so thankful for you being on this podcast, but I'm also just thankful for you.
Thanks.
And, obviously, like I shared earlier, I'm a, huge fan of, the Silicon Prairie News and in Big Omaha, and I owe so much to those things in my life. And I'm, all of us in Omaha are better because of the work that you and many others around you did in those early days, and excited that you're still rocking it. Thanks. Here in town. So thanks,
Thank
Jeff.
You, Ben. I appreciate that. Thanks so much. Thank you. Super kind.
Boom. That's it.
Cool.
Thanks for joining us today on Growing a Fruitful Brand. If you found today's show helpful, don't forget to subscribe and consider sharing it with someone who might also enjoy it. If you'd like to work with Fruitful on a branding, website, or messaging project of your own, you can always reach out on our website, fruitful.design. So until next time, don't forget to grow something good.